All right, we are live on accidentally. We're almost totally flipped over. We're live on YouTube, I think. Waiting on Instagram. Let's see the microphone. Microsoft. Okay, hold on. Give me a second. I hope the microphone is working properly. Thank you. Oh, I skip a button. I do that sometimes. And we live on Instagram too. Oh my god, that was accidental. That was not really on purpose. Hold on. I think that I'm not really doing a good job here. I guess the tiger is gonna save our lives again. Our hero, my personal hero, Tiger from the Pooh. I don't know if you guys remember that character. It's the best one. Of course, he's the funniest one. Everybody says that Winnie was funnier, but no, no one's better than the tiger. No. Okay. I think I'm all set now. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. This is it. This is what I wanted. All right. Hello, guys. Thank you for coming. All right. We go. This is better. Okay. Now it's much better. Okay, guys. Welcome back to A-létheia here. Live from the Speak Up Club. Tonight we're gonna be working with an interesting topic, as we always do. It's not because we always choose interesting topics; it's just simply we're driven to them. Uh, and the topic that we're working on today, as you have possibly seen on the title, is violence. Why do we like? Why do we see? Why do we love? Why do we gravitate to violence in our media? And what I mean by media, of course, I'm referring to movies you watch, series you watch, games you play, sports you practice or watch, etc., etc., etc. Everything that is on media, things that you consume visually mostly, and that is so full of this, so full of violence. Some people prefer to call it action. That's an euphemism. In reality, it's violence. What you have is some type of violence because even in the descriptions of movies by parenting control, the information, oh sorry, the classification on GPG, etc., is based on the level of violence, language, etc., etc., etc. So we know that even though you can refer to it as action, what is inherent of this is simply violence. Okay? Then that's the question for today. Why are we so driven, so attracted to violence in our media? And notice that I mentioned we as everybody. I'm not really classifying this as something that is only boys and no girls or any other different person. Everyone, everyone, we love conflict, and there's a lot of conflict. Sorry, and violence normally is in conflict. Sorry, that's what I meant to say at the beginning. I almost made a mistake, a logical mistake. And thank you, guys, for being constantly reminding me of how I'm not supposed to make an ass of myself in front of everyone. All right, going on to what I was saying. Um, how do we introduce the topic? Okay, let's begin by making this little analogy. There is this song from a band that I love. It's the first song of the album 10,000 Days from Two. Love that album. If you guys have any chance of checking it out, check it out because it's great as a music album, right? Um, the very first song, if I'm not, I don't want to look at it right now because I'm gonna get distracted. but if I'm not mistaken, I think the name is Vicarious. Anyway, there is a line that is, I guess, the best line, almost the punchline of the song, and it says, "Why do we love to see people die on the distance?" And I'm paraphrasing because I'm possibly changing some words, but in reality, that's what it says. Why do we love people die on a distance? Slavoj Žižek, on his book of violence, constantly refers to how easy it is for people to kill with a button. I mean, with a safe distance, not really seeing the person that is being killed, but it's so easy to take that decision. And then again, everything that we watch on the news, they has the news themselves have such a huge segment that is dedicated to simply, comment and try to portray the violent acts committed in the day that they are reporting. Anyways, so much emphasis is referred to this idea of, violent acts, but specifically those that have been captured by any type of camera, whether we're speaking about fiction or even real. There are people that get themselves in trouble for trying to find themselves awful videos, the type of videos I'm referring to. um, you know People dying in camera, basically, or simply just hurting themselves badly in camera. And those videos are out there, and there's a lot of attraction too. The thing is, when we refer to that, like how all those things are captured by the camera, we seem to be captured by those screens where those images are shown, have so many different principles that are very inherent to every individual themselves. Um, your own mental conditions, socioeconomic conditions will justify the reasons why you're attracted to it or not. But we try to simply use the most universal ones. Otherwise, why do we make this assumption? Because it simply will sound, it is, until now, if I don't explain it, too generalistic. And just to explain it, one of the main principles I'm referring to this is how we simply get one of the principles of cinema from the very beginning, because from cinema, it evolved to everything that we have now, especially, for example, video, that is the most consumed media right now. But from cinema, the very birth of cinema, one of the first aspects that made cinema more attractive than any other art expression until then was simply the capacity of capturing movement. And of course, that led to the very first action film ever made. And I don't know who made it. I could easily check, but I don't really. This is not the type of word that we are trying to say here. Hello, Ralph. Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us. So, but we're not trying to describe who, when, or what about cinema, because that's not really what we're trying to say. We're just speaking about this situation that was really obvious from the very beginning, that a movie that had that particular type of gender qualification, classification, that was action, and it was movement. For example, simply just watching a car moving, that was great. Everyone was elated when they saw those first scenes, the sunrise, the movement of waves, etc., etc. Hello, sir. Thank you, sir. You too, my friend. And then you have, for example, the um, comedic moves. We all know about Chaplin, but from there to action, action was really there from the very beginning, and it was what mostly let's say, motivated all different type of ventures in cinema that started going all around the world. And we all know that, depending on the quality of cinema, it was basically on their capacity of reproducing action, mostly. and those cinemas that had that poor action portrait did not really have much, let's say, popularity, and we all know that. I mean, if you really love movies, if you love cinema, if you've been watching movies for more than 30 years, as I have, you know that you get to know countries that make movies based on the type of movies that they make, but mostly because those movies have some sort of an impact, and the ones that have the most impact obviously have to do those that reproduce action. And that's what I mean by this is, for example, we got language barriers, right? As language barriers, we the area where I was born, Spanish speaking people, will always have to be watching everything dub or with caps translated, and that way we got to know. I remember when I was a kid, we got to know movies mainly from the American market. Apart from the American market, the biggest market was the Asian market, more than the European market. You probably say, how so? If by language barrier, you will say that Europe is closer than any Asian country, and that's totally true. But we love Asian countries, Asian, sorry, cinema specifically because of kung fu. I grew up watching so many different fantasy movies, fantasy kung fu movies when I was a kid. That then now, as a grown up, that I love reading, I'm so familiar to the vocabulary that they use when they make this. Thank you, sir. When they make this new tendency in manga that is all about the basically the Asian superstars of the martial arts world. That was something that was cool back then. I saw that when I was, I don't know, under 10 years old. I was watching this on regular national TV because my family did not really have access to cable back then. So if I was watching that, many other kids were doing that too. My uncle took me to watch a movie, one of the very first Hong Kong based movies of Bruce Lee. I think it was The Boss. That movie was beyond violent. I was elated. Oh man. Well, you can check it. You can check, Ralph. Our video will stay in YouTube. You can check the channel on YouTube, and obviously you will watch the whole thing if you want to later on. And leave a comment. We appreciate that. Thank you. Definitely, we need to catch up. Leave a comment so I can contact you for maybe, I don't know, we can actually share an episode together, man. Hey. Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming and being here. All right, continuing with what I was saying. The Boss, I think, was a movie from Bruce Lee. There was this scene I remember that I never thought it was possible, like a person killing another person by yanking the collarbone out of the person's chest. Again, I was under 10. I don't know how, but I managed to get into the movies because apparently that was not restricted in the city where I grew up. So, I watched that, and I watched all the horror films that they made visible to us in Venezuela in these two national channels that were RCTV and Venevisión. Every Sunday, every fourth Sunday or something like this, there was the horror show the full weekend, and it was horror movie after horror movie after horror movie. Everybody loved watching horror movies, no matter the nightmares that you will end up having the next day or that night. But still, that was things that was those were the things that we grew up with, and as I did and as I have shared my time with people from many different places of the world, they had their own deal of violence too in their own media. What about video games? First type of video games that we played, let's say a very simple and innocent type of video game, innocent type of looking type of video game like Mario Bros. The whole video game is just full of violence and it is widely accepted. How about cartoons, Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, He-Man? We're speaking about really old stuff, um, all really popular stuff, still up today, popular, full of action. Action is the euphemism of violence. You got more closer to the 90s. You got the Saint Seiya, or as we call them, the Zodiac Knights. A lot of violence there. We got, of course, Dragon Ball. Of course, later on, we got Evangelion. Come on, we're speaking about violence, violence, and violence, and we love it. On movies, we had so many different examples. All the Terminators. I mean, come on. All the Rambo. In fact, all the movies made by Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. For a reason, there was a reason why they were the most paid actors in their time. Why is it that the main actor, the one that gets all this money? I mean, back then, I remember reading that one of them could easily make $20 million one movie, and back then, $20 million was possibly over $60 million now. It was a lot of money. Maybe it was exaggerated. I don't really know. I know that back then that was exactly what happened. So, as we have this, we know that movies today keep having the same level of popularity based on the action that they have. Video games, the most popular ones, are all about action. And we got other different type of media. For instance, we have, for example, music that made, for instance, gangsta hip hop so popular that promoted the whole genre. Further on, it was violence what was behind those lyrics, right? Rock, full of violence too. We all know that. We got fantasy, fiction. We got sci-fi, so on, with whatever genre I want to mention about. In reality, the ones that we gravitate towards the most as general public has something, in a way, related to action, which is a way to say violence. Despite all that, we all know that most moralistic commentary will deem this aspect of our culture, and I refer to the human culture because I include Western world and I include the Eastern world, everywhere. It makes us prone to this idea of violence in our media, no matter what, simply because of that aspect that I mentioned before, that is a capacity of us seeing this thing happening on screens, right? Being captured there. The best capture of violence, the best the movie is regarded for us in terms of quality, specifically all the technical qualities. And no matter how moralistic criticism there is, the even the academic critics will agree that the best portrayed violence will definitely get every award possible. And so as has been happening later in the last years. That's why Marvel had become as bad as they became before, the imminent downfall, because people get tired of the same type of violence. They want new violence all the time. So why is it that there is this seeming dichotomy, or sorry, or breach of understanding in terms of what we are attracted to when watching media, and what we define as, decent and good, in terms of how, moralistically speaking, we can be. I mean, because there is this need. Humans require a way to assert themselves on a position of being good or bad. I mean, even though there are people that vocally express themselves as being baddies, as being, you know, evil people, the majority of people don't think that. In reality, even the worst criminal justifies themselves as, not really a criminal, but mostly a victim that had to do their part in order to survive in the world where they were raised. That's the ideology, the narrative that people buy into to justify their own evil. That's a different topic. That's not for tonight. We're speaking about how most people normally consider themselves as normal, therefore good. Well, at least not good, but definitely not evil. So, of course, the other side, the moralistic view of the world, will try to say that our media consumption is most of the reason why younger generations are it justifies the ways why younger generations are prone to violence, when in reality, when we analyze numbers, we can really say that today, more than ever, violence is really not that big in comparison to previous years, except for, of course, war zones, um, this crazy mass shooting phenomenon in the States, and that's it. But the majority of the world, people don't go dying so badly as they used to in the past, because the past was full of violence. All our history is full of violence. In fact, our history is a history of violence. I remember being told by teachers something that later on I could check on books, something similar to it happened, about that Roman society was, or they used to raise the kids of senators, checking on the coliseums where the games were held. And as you know, the Roman games consisted of people dying, right? Different ways. You have the gladiators, you have the races, you got so many different ways in which people died back then. And these kids were let's say exposed to this type of violence for the mere reason of forming character. As they seeing how other people died, they became aware of how fragile life was and how important their position in society was supposed to be, as opposed to every other person's position, because they could see everyone that belonged to any part of society, all of them reunited and enjoying the show in the Coliseum, of all different kind of peoples were all there reunited for the same reason. You can say that at churches, in different temples everywhere in the world, they had the ways in which people from different social groups were reunited on the same faith. So they mostly share their faith, culture, language, etc. Yes, true. They also share violence, but you cannot really say that it was like the imminent thing for every society. However, traditional and most primitive cultures will definitely make people that were considered the warrior kind, the warrior type of the warrior class, as honorable compared to every other class. So, why the warrior and not the teacher? Why the warrior, not the doctor? Well, actually, doctors were considered high esteem too, but warriors were desirable, popular somehow, because these people were capable of doing something that no other people were capable of doing, which is deciding between life and death. And it's life and death. It's not just arguments. It's not mathematics. It's not all the things that apparently lose the same strength, lose, let's say, interest towards population, because population might be thrilled by the romantic life of their leaders, but they're more thrilled by who killed who. Definitely. Okay. The consequences related to violent acts are things that have formed societies along history. And as such, I don't necessarily say that we love violence because we have nursed violence in our history. We have it as some sort of genetic code behavior. Not really. I'm not trying to imply that at all. I'm trying to say that when it comes to violence, um, in our media, that's the frame that we're speaking about. We are capable of of seeing something as gruesome as that. You know, the dance between life and death. We are capable of seeing that, and we learn along the way. That process of learning, I would say that a form of referring to it, the analogy of the sign of Heidegger, that opening that only happens when you learn, when you have a eureka moment. Like that situation happens along different milestones that we cover in our lives. But it's crazy that it is a milestone, the fact that we see something die, something that is not us, because of course we're still alive. But we know that because we are alive, that other that died will not live anymore. There will be a complete change of reality for that individual that just died in front of us. We don't want to learn by seeing that up, in front of us, up to our faces. Such is the reason why people that survive war zones end up mentally traumatized. Sorry, and because the gruesome images too close. But it's not the same when we watch them in movies, especially when they are fiction. We really indulge ourselves in extremely violent images because we know they're not true. We can enjoy them as the fiction that captures our imagination, allow us to simply just let go of scruples and principles. The best portrait, of course, the best experience for the person that wants to enjoy that experience. And it sounds gruesome, but it's true in other ways for those who want to enjoy that violence. So, violence is not part of human behavior, as if I wanted to say that if such a thing as human nature exists, then human nature also is violent as one of the categories. I don't want to say that it will be another type of investigation and research that we have not done. That will be speculating, and that's not what we're trying to do. I'm simply referring to the common connection we all have regarding the capacity of perceiving something that make in us a process that is something that happens. And what happens? If you see violence happen in front of you, if you see that dance between life and death, you cover a milestone. It's a mental milestone. It's an emotional milestone. It's some sort of fall from grace, losing your virginity. It is a way to change perception because from your perspective, that thing was alive and now it's dead. We simply try to ignore it from our daily life experiences, as it happens with, for example, our food. Those of us that are not vegetarians, we eat dead things. There's chicken, there's beef, there's fish. Those things were alive and they died for us to have a normal day. I always tell that to my students. How many chicken have died for you to have the age you have, right? How many cows? How many other animals that you have shared their meat have actually sacrificed their existence for you to have a good barbecue? That is a situation that people tend to ignore because, again, it happens at a safe distance. It happens from the butcher's perspective, but not from the regular human consumer. The ones that are really susceptible to this are, of course, the vegan population because they say that is cruelty. But then again, vegetables were living things when they were still plugged to their trees or roots. You unplug them, they die. And apart from that, it is to really rid yourself of any type of human responsibility of the lives of animals, even if you don't consume them literally, because there's stuff like clothing, technology, medicine that depends on us feeding on animals, using animals as source of energy of any kind. So there is violence there, but that type of violence we don't assume it as something that we care for because it's the necessary violence, the necessary violence that is there for us to subsist in life, but without, that we have managed to organize our society in such a way that we don't have to do it ourselves. We don't have to hunt. Somebody is supposed to do the killing for us, and we simply just cook it. And that's how it works. So, of course, that violence ceased to exist because in the past, when we did not really have institutionalized food markets, people had to hunt. Those of the people that had the capacity of having land and cattle on their own, they had the opportunity of killing their own animals. But those that didn't, they had to hunt. And in hunting, I mean, there was that expression that exists in every language in the world, which is hunting accident, right? People died back then for some reason because accidents that happen in the process of capturing animals. So of course kids had to be exposed to this. And of course kids had to see some type of violence no matter what. There was the violence that they had to live in their own households, violence in their towns, wars, skirmishes, conflicts of any kind. We got stories of this in many different books that try to portray a time as clear as they can. And in all of them, we know that there is always a reference to violent acts that normal citizens incur. It still happens. I mean, you simply have to check the news of Israel. A few days ago, it's about settlers, no warriors, no soldiers, settlers. Settlers, by a definition, is just regular people that find a place to live. They find a place that supposed to be free for them to populate. And these people are doing this, but with places that were already populated, that had houses there. The Palestinian people had their houses there in these new sectors that are being attacked by these settlers, so-called settlers. And one of them just killed someone. It's not, again, uh, part of any armed force. Is simply a settler. And this is something that is happening. There is violence that is happening today, produced by regular people constantly, all around the world. But it's not that big as it was. everywhere in the world. I mean, no matter how glorifying we're trying to comment about the history of our ancestral tribes in Latin America, I mean, the Mayas, the Aztecs, the Incas, and everywhere else, all of them committed a lot, extreme violence to other tribes when they had to fight, or to themselves when it was supposed to be, in terms of whatever ritual type of violence they incur themselves. Now, I'm not saying that the majority of those tribes were or acted with human sacrifices, but there was a lot of it, okay, of any type. There was type of violence that was proved as disciplinary violence, and without some of those societies could not really have subsisted, sorry, couldn't really subsist for the time that they did. All Europe was formed by the different wars that formed the European continent, and some of those were beyond the European continent, as it was the Crusaders. And if we read about it, it's not something as gruesome, historically speaking, as those stories. The things that are depicted there about the type of violence that these people committed in that place is just wow. I mean, Israel simply just known the Israeli or the Palestine history as that place of the world, as a place full of violence, and it's true. There's a lot of violence there, historically speaking. I would not say that they're more violent than anyone else. I would just simply say that there's a lot of report of that type of violence. There's a lot of things that people comment on that type of violence, meaning that there is attraction. People find out that when there such thing happens, things change drastically. Conclusions can be drawn that will allow people take provisions, take actions to let's say prepare ahead of time to possible violence. Because I mean, in Spanish there is this saying that I'm gonna try to translate, that when you see your neighbor's beers on fire, you put yours on water. Maybe there is a saying like this in English, but I really don't know. I'm really sorry, people, if I'm letting you down with this. I'm not the best guy when it comes to sayings. I make my own. For that reason, it's gonna be kind of difficult for me to try to find one out of my, you know, first thoughts. But possibly the same principle can be seen everywhere. That no matter where you are from, that if you know that bad stuff is happening to your neighbor, and you know that though that stuff happens because of the consequences of your neighbor's behavior, well, obviously it's not a bad thing for you to observe your own behavior to see if you can avoid this same problem. That's the reason why morals exist. Morals exist simply because for some reason or another, we did not really like what happened to our neighbor. And we wanted to establish some rules about how to behave in such way that you can avoid the violence that your neighbor suffered. But it was important to know about this violence to avoid the problem, to make the preparations to avoid the problem. The conservative parties in many countries today use this technique, the abuse of this technique of bombarding their media with gruesome stories about how changes in society will make their society weak. And these changes all come on the name of violence that is produced by whatever. So that's the reason why conservative media tends to condemn, awfully, uh, expressions of violence in any type of media, as we mentioned before, like games, music, movies, series, etc., 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 on behalf of producing fear towards population, so they seem like a reasonable way to correct that evil, the evil produced for, you know, this fear. And of course, in such a way that makes content creators to lean sometimes uh, and accept certain ideologic content that is supposed to lean towards the left, towards a more democratic, a more less Republican, more democratic, if we use American jargon, but simply conservative, less conservative, or liberal, more liberal behavior. The one that is referred to be let be, simply. But in reality, violence is justified on both sides because when it comes to defending population, what Republican media does is glorifies the arm hand of the state, like police, military, and other different type of representatives of the state. At the end, you got different type of violence represented by different type of media that justify different, even opposing type of ideologies, making us understand that it's not really about the violence within our lives. It's about a need somehow that is captured by this principle. The principle, that was given from the very beginning, the capacity of cameras capturing movement, filming cameras, sorry, capturing movement. Now digital is even better. Um, that capacity and our need to cover this emotional milestone, this mental, physical milestone that is needed in order for us to consider consequences of how the world works. It is as simple as gravity. And as you can see, most violence happens in the way in which gravity is manipulated as, you know, simply the way in which you exert force is something that is possible because of gravity. So when force is used to kill, to destroy, to break, well, you can see that through movement, and you can see that as simple as gravity. But that simple thing conveys so much, that then again, the best depiction of it is the one that we tend to appreciate the most. So, of course, really good movies are movies that have a little bit of everything, but they must have really rich violence with any other different type of justification. As, for example, it was Star Wars. So much that, the ones that are hated the most, the Star Wars, I mean, movies that are hated the most are those ones that had not much action. People are they People are driven to this, and we simply cannot just let ourselves be judged by others, as we being sick psychos, non-emphatic people that say that they do enjoy their own way of violence, different type. And I'm really sorry if you get triggered when I say that you enjoy, but from a perspective of psychoanalysis, the Jusans, in reality, yes, you enjoy it. Otherwise, you will not be driven to it. And what I mean by enjoy is simply you get magnetically attracted to it, not because you feel a pleasure, but simply because you see value on it. Not a value that you want to appreciate as something like, for example, that you will pursue, but a value that tells you how something is valuable for you. Violence glorifies death, but at the same time, it glorifies life. You want to survive. The milestone is the capacity of surviving. That's the reason why when we watch any type of violent media, we want the hero to survive because we connect to the hero. We don't want the hero to die. Most of the cases when this happens, it has to be really well justified. Still, we buy it. Still, we consume it. I don't know if this will ever end, but as long as there is media, I guess we will have violence. So I guess it's a waste of time if we try to justify. No, sorry. If we try to uh, judge, simply even cancel, as the tendency today, cultural tendency today, things that portray violence because violence is embedded in the principles of visual media. It's there. That's the only way you can actually really understand the value of violence. Seeing violence live, there's nothing to really appreciate about that. Nothing. You don't want trauma. Now, totally different will be the case of those people that experiment violence in controlled environments, as it happens to be athletes in sports, semi controlled environments, as it happens to be martial world. And what I mean by a martial world, I'm not speaking about martial arts, I'm speaking about martial world of militaries. Is semi controlled because not every military that works on the military is actively involved in confrontation, physical confrontation. Not many militaries actually had that experience. But then again, if you have that experience, you're already there, you're already armed. So, yeah, you kind of have that too. Those people perceive violence from a different perspective and will always disregard um, us, the civilians, as you know, people that live peaceful lives, not understanding exactly what we meant by saying that we enjoy a scene which someone was killed, because we really don't understand what it means to be in that situation. But we do. It is simply that it's a different type of milestone. And with that, we are done with the topic of tonight. So I know that it might actually have sounded a little bit like negative, but it's not really negative. It's just simply true. I mean, one of the things that we do here in Lethia is trying to get conclusions that do not really tilt on a position of preaching. In fact, we want to be in a position of non judgmental because we want to perceive something beyond the simple problem. We want to see the truth beyond the simple problem. We all know that if we speak about things that are good or things that are evil, we are simply just trying to justify some people over other people. Because for some people are good, and for other people, for this other people, the same group are evil. It all depends on what they did to what group. Living living among other people, living with other people, sharing life with other people is impossible to be done without incurring from time to time in some type of conflict. And conflict will eventually have some kind of violence. And we will love that this type of violence is simply just being appreciated on screens and not live. That would be a better conclusion. All right, people. Remember, the Speak Up Club is a service that we offer here in A-létheia to all those people that are interested in learning how to express themselves much better than the way that they express themselves now as ESL speakers, meaning English as a second language. I'm not a native speaker, as you could tell. I got a Latin American accent, so I'm from Latin America. I mean, Latin America is because I'm from all over the place. I got a mixed accent myself, and I know that what it means to be in a position of learning and getting to sound better than the way you sounded before. If have always been a goal for me to be the best I can be in a language that is not my own, to even up the the two languages that I have. I'm a quite decent good speaker in my own language, Spanish. I should be a good decent speaker at the same time in English. And if I learn a different language, I will have to try to be the same because otherwise it will not be exciting. Learning a different language means being capable of really doing everything you do in your own language in that language that you're learning. Here, we will help you by giving you tools in which you can do that. You can get a level, an ideal level to your communication. And this will affect everything, will affect how you write, how you read, how you listen, etc. So, obviously, the Speak Up Club is directed, geared to those that already have knowledge in English and you want to learn more and you want to get better. Okay? So if you want to, you're invited. We got our Wednesdays and Saturday sessions, but we're opening more depending on the quantity of people that want to sign up. We invite you to come and sign up. And with that said, this is it for tonight. Thank you for those people that made it. Um, for those people that did not make my salute in the chat, leave any comment if you get to watch this later on because we always love to read from anyone that want to, give us some of their impressions of this work that we do. Purpose of these sessions lives is to show you our progress. Just that. Well, people, have a great rest of the weekend. That's just starting now. Bye. People from Instagram. And bye.